All right, we're going to talk about Chapter 6, Lesson 2 today, and that is all about finding the percent of a number mentally. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we are looking at this mentally is to think about percent fraction equivalents. So for example, 25% is the same as 1/4 as a fraction. 20% is the same as 1/5, 10% is the same as 1/10, 12.5% is the same as 1/8, and 16 2/3% is the same as 1/6. And the list continues. That's going to be very, very helpful as we are going through some of these problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these examples here, and we're going to find the percentage that it gives us and try to find the fraction that it also represents. So example 1, letter A, it says 75% of 24. So we go up here, 75% is the same as 3/4. So this is really 3/4 of 24. If we remember all the way back to our rational numbers chapter, this is of means multiply. So this is really going to be 20 or 3/4 times 24 over 1. And we can look at this and do mental math. We can cross cancel here. 4 and 24 have a common factor of 4. So I can pull 1 4 out of 4 and 6 4s out of 24. So this is really 3 times 6. So 75% of 24 is 18. This all right here should be done in your head. That's what it means by doing it mentally. This should all be done in your head. So letter B, it says 80% of 60. Well, let's go up to the table here and find 80%. 80% is right here. So 80% is 4/5. So this is really 4/5 of 60. I know that 4 divided by 5 times 60 is also the same as 4 times 60 divided by 5. But I could also move this 5 over here, so 60 divided by 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So 4 times 12, this is 48. Example 2. This is 10% of 76. Now there's a very special trick when finding 10% as well as 1% in letter B. Finding 10% of a number simply means moving the decimal point one place to the left. So really, I'm going to move the decimal point from behind the 6 to in front of the 6. So 10% of 7.6 is 76 is 7.6. And letter B, 1% of 122. 1% means I move the decimal point 2 places. So instead of 122, I have 1.22. So this is how you would do things mentally in your head. Make sure that you are using your techniques when you are going through and doing mental math. Please try to refrain from using a calculator. The reason why is because if you become too dependent on a calculator, you might not be able to use it on one of your assessments coming up. And I don't want you to become dependent on using your calculator to figure out some of these relatively straightforward percentage problems. All right, so let's look at now estimating. When we estimate, there's a couple different things that we can do. We can either change the percent to one of them on the previous page, which means one of them where we know what the equivalent fraction is. Or, probably one of the easier ways to do it is to round the fraction to the nearest tenth, or 10%. So for example, if I had 13%, I would round that to 10%. Or, there's something else I can do. I can change the number to the nearest 10 as well. That is also very, very helpful and straightforward, especially when it comes to some of the numbers like in example 3, letter C, 81. I can change that to 80. So now letter A, 26%. That's really close to 25%, and we know the fraction for that. So this is really 1/4. 64 is divisible by 4, so I'm going to keep those. So I have 1/4 times 64. So 26% of 64 is about 16. Do not get in the habit of going, well, 26% of 64, so I'm going to find 26% of 64. That's 16.64. I'm going to round that to the nearest whole number to get 17. Do not do that. That is a poor way to estimate, because that basically means that you're doing the problem and then rounding at the end. Letter B, 2/3% of 891. Now, doing this problem here might be a little bit of a challenge, but it's nothing that we can't handle. So 2/3% of 891 is very similar to 2/3 of 891. I want to round that to 900. The reason why I kept this fraction is because if I were to change 2/3 to a percent, I would have to divide by 100, which means that I find 2/3 of 900 and then divide that by 100. So 2/3 of 900 is 600. Divide by 100, so 2/3 of a percent of 891 is about 6. Letter C, this one is going to be one that's going to be a little bit more difficult. 39% of 81. So 39% is really close to 40%. And I know that 40% is about 2/5 as a fraction. I can change 81 to 80. So really, I increase the percentage by a little bit, and I decrease the number by a little bit. So my estimate should be still pretty good. Now, if I go through this, I know that 80 divided by 5 is 16. And 2 times 16, this is 32. So about 32 is 39% of 81. And if you were to calculate the actual number, 39% of 81, is 31.59. So this is a pretty good estimate. And then letter D, 120% of 51. 120% is like 100% plus 20%. 100% is just 1, and 20% is 1/5. So I'm really looking for 1 1/5, or 6/5 of 50. I change 51 to 50. I know that 50 divided by 5 is 10, and 6 times 10, so 120% of 51 is about 60. This lesson is a little bit tricky. Please be practicing your mental math skills, and please be asking questions if you have them. That's going to be very, very important when it comes to our quiz. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, this is the end of lesson 2.